Welcome to Caledonia Sleeps, your peaceful escape into the heart of Scotland. The fire burns in the hearth tonight. Beyond the window, February winds sweep across the Highlands, cold and keen. But here by the fireside we are warm. The peat glows red and gold, settling with soft whispers. Outside the world sleeps beneath winter's last grip, waiting for the promise of spring. Tonight we explore the traditions and folklore of love in old Scotland, the customs that guided courtship, the omens that foretold a marriage's success, the traditions that bound two lives together, stories of how people fell in love, how they read the signs, how they celebrated their unions, and how they sought glimpses of their romantic futures. In Scotland, love has always been woven through with something else. Community, certainly. Magic, perhaps. A recognition that to love deeply is to follow certain paths, to honour certain traditions, to watch for certain signs. So settle closer to the fire. Let the wind rattle at the windows as we journey through centuries of Scottish romance, from the first tentative steps of courtship to the joyful chaos of wedding celebrations, from the symbols lovers exchanged to the divination rituals performed by candlelight. Let us begin at the beginning, when two people first meet. Before there were weddings, before there were symbols and tokens and divination rituals, there was a quieter, gentler stage of courtship. The time when two people first began to walk toward each other, testing the waters, discovering whether what they felt might grow into something lasting. In Scotland, courtship was rarely a private affair. Young people met at ceilidhs, those gatherings where fiddles played and feet stamped, and the whole community came together to dance and laugh. They met at church, at market fairs, during harvest work, when everyone laboured side by side, bringing in the crops. And once a young man had noticed a particular young woman, once his heart had begun to lean in her direction, he would begin the careful process of walking out. Walking out meant exactly what it sounds like. A young couple, having expressed mutual interest, would take walks together, but they were never alone. A chaperone always accompanied them, an older sister perhaps, an aunt, a friend of the family, someone to ensure that propriety was maintained, that the courtship remained respectable. During these walks, during the brief conversations at gatherings, love tokens might be exchanged. A young woman might embroider a handkerchief for her sweetheart, her initials stitched alongside his, a promise made in thread. Small carved items, ribbons, or simple gifts would pass between courting couples. These tokens were kept carefully, treasured, shown to friends as proof that someone had chosen you, that you were walking a path toward marriage. In Orkney and some parts of the Highlands, There existed a custom that seems shocking to modern sensibilities, but appeared to have served a practical purpose in its time: bundling. Historical sources suggest that on long winter nights, when cold was bone deep and fuel for heating was precious, a courting couple might be allowed to share a bed, but they were fully clothed. The young woman might have a bolster cover tied over her legs, or the young man might be sewn into a sack, according to accounts recorded in later centuries. The idea, as described in these sources, was simple. They could talk and get to know each other in the warmth and comfort of the household, while physical intimacy was prevented by layers of fabric and the watchful presence of family members nearby. It bears noting that this practice was controversial even in its own time. From the 17th century onward, clergy preached against bundling and publicly shamed those who practiced it. Yet evidence suggests it persisted in some remote communities well into later centuries, likely because it offered a solution to the challenge of courtship in harsh winter conditions, when outdoor meetings were impossible and fuel was scarce. This practice may seem peculiar now, but it reflects the practical realities of courtship in isolated communities when winter darkness fell early and resources were limited. It was a way of honouring both the need for young people to know each other before marriage and the requirements of family supervision and community standards of modesty, even as those standards were being actively debated. As courtship progressed, if both parties were willing and both families approved, a betrothal would follow. The young man would formally ask the bride's father for permission to marry. Sometimes this was done with great ceremony, the suitor and his best friend visiting the bride's house, engaging in witty dialogue, full of symbolic references and double meanings. If permission was granted, a bottle of whiskey would be shared to toast the couple. The formal betrothal marked the couple's intent to marry, witnessed by both families and the community. From that moment, the path to marriage was set. The community had witnessed the promise. The couple had declared their intent, and now came the time to prepare, to plan, and to watch for the signs that would tell them what their future together might hold. In Scotland, nothing was left to chance. Every detail surrounding a wedding, from the weather on the day to the first person seen upon waking, carried meaning. These were not idle superstitions, but ways of reading the world, of seeking reassurance in an uncertain time. The day of the week mattered deeply. An old rhyme, still remembered in many parts of Scotland, laid out the fortune each day would bring. Monday for health, Tuesday for wealth, Wednesday best of all, Thursday for losses, Friday for crosses, Saturday for no luck at all. Wednesday then was the golden day, the day when all the stars aligned. Saturday, despite being convenient for guests, was considered deeply unlucky. No sensible bride would marry on a Saturday if she could avoid it. The month mattered too. May marriages were cursed according to tradition. Marry in May and rue the day, the saying warned. Perhaps this stemmed from ancient Roman customs, or perhaps from the simple fact that May was a time for planting, for work, not for celebration. June, by contrast, was blessed, named for Juno, the Roman goddess of marriage. June weddings promised happiness and fertility, but more than the calendar, it was the signs on the wedding day itself that people watched most closely. The weather, of course, was the first thing they checked. If the sun shone on a wedding morning, if light broke through the clouds and blessed the bride as she left her home, then joy would follow. Happy is the bride the sun shines on, went the old saying. But rain was not always ill-omened. In some regions, rain on a wedding day was thought to bring fertility and wealth. The bride might arrive at the church, soaked and shivering, but she would bear many children, and her household would prosper. Wind was the best omen of all. A windy wedding meant good fortune, prosperity, a marriage that would weather any storm. Animals, too, served as messengers. A black cat crossing the bride's path was lucky, a sign of happiness and good fortune. But the cat must cross in front, not behind. A chimney sweep encountered on the way to church was especially auspicious. His soot-blackened face, a charm against evil spirits. Even today, some couples arrange for a chimney sweep to appear at their wedding, tipping his hat for luck. Birds required careful observation. A single magpie seen on the wedding morning was deeply unfortunate. One for sorrow, the rhyme began. But 2 magpies meant joy, 3 meant a successful journey, 4 meant good news. Brides leaving for church would scan the sky, counting magpies anxiously, hoping for the right number. Other omens were more intimate, more personal. The first person a bride saw upon waking on her wedding day would influence her marriage. An old woman meant wisdom in the years to come. A young child meant many children of her own. But to see a man first, any man other than her intended, was unlucky. Some brides kept their eyes closed until their mother or a trusted female friend entered the room, refusing to risk ill fortune. Breaking a mirror before the wedding was disaster, as was stumbling on the threshold when entering the church or the new home. These were signs that the marriage itself might be broken, that misfortune would dog the couple's steps. But there were ways to counteract bad omens. Carrying a silver sixpence in your left shoe brought prosperity. Wearing a sprig of white heather hidden in your dress or bouquet brought luck. Avoiding the colour green in your wedding clothes kept the fairies from becoming jealous and causing mischief. And most importantly, carrying salt in your pocket or sprinkling it on the threshold protected against any evil spirits that might wish the couple harm. These omens and superstitions were not about controlling fate. They were about acknowledging it, about showing respect for the invisible forces that shaped life. And they gave brides and grooms something to do in the anxious hours before the ceremony. something to focus on besides their own nervousness. The marriage might be arranged, or it might be for love, but either way, the omens mattered. They always had, they always would. And once the omens had been read, once the couple had navigated the signs and portents, the wedding itself could begin, with all its customs, all its laughter, all its tests and celebrations. Let us step into a Highland village in the depths of winter. Snow lies thick on the ground. The lochs are frozen at the edges. Inside the cottages, fires burn constantly, the only source of warmth against the bitter cold. And a wedding is about to take place. Long before modern wedding ceremonies took their current form, there was handfasting. The word itself has become part of our language, tying the knot. In medieval and early modern Scotland, handfasting referred to the betrothal ceremony, the formal engagement that preceded marriage. The couple would stand before witnesses, often at a sacred place or at a threshold of a home, that liminal space between outside and inside, between one life and another. Their hands would be bound together, literally tied with cord or ribbon, or most commonly with tartan. The tartan might represent the bride's clan, or the groom's, or both woven together. The binding was done in a specific way, creating an infinity pattern, an endless loop with no beginning and no end. Words would be spoken, promises made. This was the formal pledge to marry, and in the eyes of the community, and often the law, this promise was binding. It could be broken only through a formal release, much like a modern broken engagement, but it was not to be taken lightly. Later romantic accounts, particularly from the 18th and 19th centuries, describe handfasting as a trial marriage for a year and a day, after which a couple could part ways if they chose. Whether such arrangements actually existed in widespread practice is debated by historians. Some evidence suggests that in certain remote areas, particularly in the Highlands and Islands, couples might live together after betrothal, but before a formal church wedding, especially when priests were scarce and travel to a church was difficult. But the idea of a formalised year and a day trial has more romance to it than historical documentation. What we do know is that the physical binding of hands was real and meaningful. The couple's hands were joined, tied together with cloth or tartan, creating a visible symbol of their union. When they were unbound, the engagement was sealed. The cord or tartan would be kept, a physical reminder of the bond created that day. This was not unique to Scotland, but Scotland has claimed it, preserved it, brought it back. Today, handfasting has been revived, particularly among those who seek Celtic or pagan traditions. Modern Scottish weddings, even Christian ones, sometimes incorporate a handfasting element. The couple's hands are bound during the ceremony, honouring the old ways, creating a visible symbol of their joining. There is something powerful about it, the physicality, the binding, the recognition that marriage is a tying together, a deliberate choice to be connected, to limit your own freedom in exchange for partnership. Two hands bound together, facing the world as one. But Scottish wedding traditions were not all solemn and ancient. Some were raucous, messy, and borderline chaotic, none more so than the blackening. This tradition is still practiced in parts of Scotland today, particularly the northeast, in Aberdeenshire and around, and it is exactly as wild as it sounds. Before the wedding, sometimes days before, sometimes the night before, the bride or groom or both would be ambushed by friends and family. They would be captured, held down, and covered head to toe in a mixture of substances. Treacle, certainly, flour, feathers, soot, rotten eggs, fish guts, spoiled milk, anything sticky, smelly, disgusting, and difficult to remove. The victim, now thoroughly blackened, would then be paraded through the town or village. They might be tied to a lamppost, driven through the streets in the back of a truck, marched to every pub in town for a drink. The procession was loud, accompanied by pots and pans being banged, horns being blown, everyone shouting and laughing. Why? Why on earth would you do this to someone about to get married? The answer, like many folk customs, is layered. On one level, it is a test. If you can endure being covered in filth and paraded through town without losing your temper or your sense of humour, you can endure the trials of marriage. Marriage will throw mess at you, literal and metaphorical, best to prove early that you can handle it. On another level, it is community bonding. The wedding is not just about the couple, it is about the village, the town, the network of relationships that will support or fail to support the marriage. By participating in the blackening, the community stakes its claim. We were here, we witnessed, we helped create this union, even if our help looked like dumping a bucket of treacle over your head. And on yet another level, it is apotropaic magic. Drive away evil spirits by making the couple so disgusting that no malevolent force would want to come near them. Protect the marriage by making the participants temporarily untouchable. Whatever the reason, the blackening endures. Videos of modern blackenings circulate online, showing shrieking brides covered in substances best left unidentified, laughing despite themselves, held up by friends who are equally covered in splashback. It looks like chaos. It is chaos, but it is also tradition, a specifically Scottish way of saying, we love you, we support you, and also we are absolutely going to make you regret choosing us as your friends. After the blackening comes the cleaning, hours in the shower, shampoo after shampoo, the smell lingering despite all efforts. And then, finally clean, the victim joins their partner at the altar, knowing they have passed through something together, even if separately. They have been tested, they have survived, the marriage can begin. Another physical test awaited the groom in some regions, particularly in Fife and the Lowlands. This one was called creeling, and it involved, as the name suggests, a creel, a large wicker basket used for carrying fish or peat. On the morning of the wedding, or sometimes the day before, the groom would be given a creel to carry on his back. But this was no empty basket. It was filled with stones, heavy stones, a great weight of them, enough to make the creel a genuine burden. The groom had to carry this creel through the town or around the village. He could not set it down. He could not rest. He had to keep walking, keep carrying, with the weight pressing down on his shoulders, his back aching, sweat dripping despite the winter cold. The only way he could be released was if his bride came and kissed him. Then and only then he could set the creel down. So he would walk and walk and walk, calling for his bride, asking where she was, pleading for her to come and kiss him so he could put down the stones. And she would make him wait. She would take her time. She would let him carry the weight a bit longer to prove his devotion, to test his determination. When she finally appeared and kissed him, the creel could be set down, the stones could be emptied out, and the symbolism was clear. Marriage is a weight. It is a burden, in the old sense of the word, something you carry. But it is also something that can be lightened, eased, made bearable by your partner's love, the kiss that releases you, the partnership that shares the weight. In some versions of the tradition, the bride's family would keep adding stones to the creel as the groom walked, making it heavier and heavier, testing not just his endurance, but his good humour. Could he laugh while carrying an increasingly impossible load? Could he keep going even when the task seemed endless? If he could, he was deemed ready for marriage. Beyond handfasting, blackening and creeling, Scottish weddings had dozens of smaller customs, many specific to winter. A silver sixpence or lucky penny would be placed in the bride's shoe, specifically the right shoe, before she walked to ceremony. This ensured prosperity and good fortune. The coin had to be silver, and ideally it should have been given by a happily married woman, passing on her luck to the new bride. Wedding bannocks, flat oatcakes, would be broken over the bride's head as she entered her new home for the first time. Unmarried guests would scramble for the pieces, and whoever caught one would supposedly be the next to marry. The bannock breaking had to be done at the threshold, the magical space between outside and inside, old life and new. The couple would share whiskey from a quaich, a traditional two-handled drinking cup. They would each hold one handle and drink together, symbolising their partnership, their shared life, the fact that they would now face everything together, bitter and sweet alike. First footing customs applied to newlyweds as well. The first person to cross the threshold of their new home should be a dark-haired man, bringing coal for warmth, salt for preservation and protection, and whiskey for celebration. This would bring luck to the marriage and to the household. Every detail mattered. The direction you entered the house, the hand you used to open the door, the words spoken at the threshold. These were not superstitions in the modern sense, not irrational fears, but accumulated wisdom, generations of observation about what made marriages work, translated into ritual and symbol. And in winter, when survival itself was uncertain, when the cold could kill and food could run short, these protections mattered even more. A strong marriage was not just about love. It was about partnership, about two people working together to survive, to build a life, keep the fire burning through the darkest months. We turn now from the customs of joining to the symbols that have carried meaning through centuries. But love in Scotland was not only expressed through grand stories and dramatic customs, it was also woven into the small things, the symbols carried and worn, the plants and objects that spoke of devotion and protection. In the Highlands, heather covers the moors in a carpet of purple. In late summer, the hills blaze with it, a sea of colour rolling away to the horizon. But sometimes, rarely, you might find a sprig of white heather, and if you do, you have found luck itself. The most famous story of white heather comes from the ancient Celtic hero tales, though the version we know today was shaped significantly by 18th century literary reimagining. The Scottish poet James Macpherson published a cycle of epic poems between 1760 and 1763, claiming to have translated them from ancient Gaelic manuscripts. These poems, known as the Ossian cycle, told of Ossian, a legendary bard and his family. Among the tales was the story of Malvina and Oscar. While characters bearing these names appear in genuine Irish mythology, Oisin and Oscar of the Fianna, modern scholarship has demonstrated that Macpherson largely created or heavily embellished the specific narratives in his poems, working from fragmentary sources and his own imagination. The white heather legend, as it comes down to us, appears to be primarily Macpherson's literary creation, though it drew upon older Celtic traditions and genuine affection for heather in Scottish culture. The legend goes like this. Malvina was the daughter of Ossian, the bard and the granddaughter of the great hero Finn MacCool. She was beautiful, gentle, devoted. She fell in love with Oscar, a warrior as brave as he was noble, renowned throughout the land for his courage and his kind heart. They planned to marry, to build a life together, to have children and grow old in peace. But war came, as it always did in those days. Oscar was called to battle. He fought bravely, as he always did, but this time his luck ran out. He was killed on the battlefield, struck down in the prime of his life. A messenger came to Malvina with the news. As he knelt before her, he placed in her hands a sprig of purple heather. Oscar, dying on the field, had asked that this heather be given to Malvina as a final token of his undying love. Malvina took the heather and held it to her chest, and she wept. She wept for the life they would never have, for the children they would never raise, for the old age they would never see together. Her tears fell on the purple heather, and where they touched, the colour drained away, leaving the flowers white as bone, white as snow, white as grief itself. Through her sorrow, Malvina spoke a blessing. Let this white heather be a symbol. May it bring good fortune to all who find it. May it be a sign of love remembered, of sorrow transformed into blessing. And so it has been ever since. White heather is the rarest find, a natural variation that occurs uncommonly in the purple-flowered plant. To find it is lucky, to carry it is a blessing, and Scottish brides, for generations, have carried white heather in their wedding bouquets, a reminder that even sorrow can be transformed, that love endures even through loss. Whether Malvina and Oscar, as described by Macpherson, ever existed in oral tradition, we cannot say with certainty. What we can say is that the story as we know it, the messenger bringing purple heather, Malvina's tears turning it white, her blessing upon those who find it, comes to us through Macpherson's 18th century poems, yet the custom itself is genuinely old. The practice of carrying white heather for luck predates Macpherson and appears rooted in long-standing Scottish traditions surrounding this plant. The legend gave narrative form to a belief that already existed, and white heather growing on the Scottish hills is undeniably real, a natural colour variation that occurs uncommonly in the typically purple-flowered plant. If you walk the Highlands in late summer and find a sprig of white heather, pick it carefully, keep it close, and remember that sometimes a literary creation can capture the spirit of something older and truer. The Scottish reverence for this plant, the belief in luck found in rare things, the sense that sorrow and blessing can be woven together like the colours in a moor. In Edinburgh, on the Royal Mile, that runs from the castle down to Holyrood Palace, there once stood a row of locked booths, small shops where jewellers and craftsmen sold their wares. These were the Luckenbooths, locked booths, secure places where valuable goods could be safely displayed and sold. Among the most popular items sold there were heart-shaped brooches, intricate silver pieces featuring two hearts intertwined, often with a crown above them. These were Luckenbooth brooches, and they became one of Scotland's most enduring symbols of love. A Luckenbooth brooch was given as a token of betrothal, pinned to a woman's shawl or dress to show that her heart was spoken for, locked away, claimed. The two hearts represented the couple, intertwined and inseparable. The crown represented loyalty, commitment, the sovereignty of their bond. But Luckenbooths were given for other reasons too. A new mother would receive one, pinned to her baby's blanket or clothing to protect the child from evil spirits and the evil eye. The brooch was believed to have protective power, the ability to ward off harm, to keep danger at bay. Luckenbooths were passed down through families, from mother to daughter, grandmother to granddaughter, each one carrying the accumulated luck and protection of generations. They were silver, almost always, because silver was sacred, pure, aligned with the moon and with protective magic. Today you can still buy Luckenbooth brooches in Edinburgh, created from old designs, sold to tourists and to Scots alike. They are worn at weddings, given as Valentine's gifts, pinned to babies' clothes, just as they were centuries ago. The old locked booths are gone, demolished in the 19th century to widen the street, but the symbol remains, a heart locked away, kept safe, given only to one special person. In Celtic art, in the illuminated manuscripts and carved stones, you find patterns that seem to have no beginning and no end, lines that weave over and under, creating intricate designs that loop back on themselves eternally. These are Celtic knots, and among them are love knots, patterns specifically designed to represent the bond between two people. A love knot has no break, no loose ends. It is continuous, endless, a visual representation of eternal devotion. Two lines interweave, creating a pattern that cannot be untangled without destroying it. This is marriage. This is partnership. This is love. Celtic knots were carved into wedding gifts, embroidered on clothing, drawn on letters between separated lovers. They were a promise. I am bound to you, and you to me, and neither of us can break free without breaking the whole. In modern times, Celtic love knots appear on wedding rings, on invitations, on anniversary gifts. The ancient pattern endures, speaking a truth that needs no words. Scotland's national flower is the thistle, prickly and proud, beautiful in its own defiant way. According to legend, the thistle saved Scotland from invasion when a barefoot Norse raider stepped on one in the night and cried out in pain, alerting the sleeping Scottish army. But the thistle is also a symbol of love, particularly of protective love. To give someone a thistle is to say, I will defend what is mine. I am not easily conquered. My love is fierce. Thistle bouquets at Scottish weddings are common, the spiky heads mixed with softer flowers, a reminder that love must sometimes have thorns, that protection is as much a part of devotion as tenderness. The rowan tree, with its white flowers in spring and bright red berries in autumn, was believed to have protective powers. It warded off witchcraft, kept evil spirits at bay, and blessed the home it grew beside. Lovers would plant rowan trees together, creating a living symbol of their union. The tree would grow as their love grew, providing protection for their home and their children. A rowan planted at a wedding would outlast the couple who planted it, standing as testament to their bond long after they were gone. These symbols, small and large, woven through with meaning, gave form to love. They made the invisible visible. They turned feeling into object, promise into protection, devotion into something you could hold in your hand and pass to your children. And when weddings were done, when the symbols had been exchanged and the customs observed, there remained one more thing, the desire to know the future, to see what love might yet come. In the quieter corners of Scottish tradition, away from the noise of wedding celebrations and the public display of symbols, there existed a more private magic, the magic of divination, of seeking glimpses into the future, of asking the universe, who will I love, and who will love me? These practices were particularly common among young women, though young men participated too, sometimes. They were performed on certain nights of the year, when the veil between present and future seemed thin. Valentine's Eve, Halloween, the winter solstice, times when magic was thought to be stronger, when questions might be answered if asked correctly. The simplest and most common ritual involved an apple. On Valentine's Eve, a young woman would take an apple and begin to peel it, working carefully to keep the peel in one long, unbroken strip. This required patience and a steady hand. If the peel broke, the magic would fail. Once the apple was fully peeled, she would stand, hold the peel in her right hand, and swing it 3 times around her head in a sunwise direction. Then she would toss it over her left shoulder and let it fall to the floor behind her. Then she would turn and look at the pattern the peel had made. If she looked carefully, with the right kind of eyes, she might see a letter, the initial of her true love's name. Sometimes the letter was clear, sometimes it required imagination, but once seen, it could not be unseen, and the young woman would spend the rest of the year looking at every young man whose name began with that letter, wondering which one the apple peel had revealed. Another ritual was hemp seed sowing. This ritual required more courage, for it had to be performed alone, at midnight, in a churchyard. The young woman would take a handful of hemp seed and walk to the graveyard. At the stroke of midnight, she would begin to walk backward, scattering the seed behind her and chanting, "Hemp seed I sow, hemp seed I hoe. Let him that is my true love come after me and mow." If she was brave enough to look over her shoulder, she might see a figure following her, mowing the invisible hemp. This figure was her future husband, shown to her in vision, a glimpse across time of the man she would marry. But the ritual was dangerous. You were in a graveyard at midnight, calling on powers you did not fully understand. If you saw something other than your future husband, if something else answered your call, you might be driven mad with fear. Many girls walked to the churchyard gate and then turned back, unable to find the courage to enter, to scatter the seed, to look over their shoulder. The dumb cake ritual required friends and silence. On Valentine's Eve, a group of young women would gather to bake a cake together, but there were strict rules. No one could speak, not a single word, from the moment the baking began until the ritual was complete. The cake had to be made in absolute silence, or the magic would fail. Each girl would contribute an ingredient, working together to mix the batter, pour it into the pan, place it in the oven. Still in silence, they would wait for it to bake. When it was done, each girl would cut a slice and take it to her bed. The cake had to be eaten, walking backward to the bedroom. Once in bed, the girl would place the remaining piece of cake under her pillow and go to sleep, still not having spoken a word. In her dreams that night, her future husband would appear and offer her a drink of water. She would wake knowing his face, ready to recognize him when she met him in waking life. The dumb cake was difficult to perform successfully. Someone always laughed. Someone always spoke, breaking the spell. But when it was done correctly, when the silence was maintained and the dream came, it was said to be the most reliable of all the Valentine's divinations. At midnight on Valentine's Eve, a young woman might sit alone before a mirror with a single candle burning. She would gaze into her own reflection, unfocusing her eyes, letting her mind drift. If she looked long enough, if she was patient and brave, another face might appear beside hers in the mirror. The face of her future husband, looking over her shoulder, meeting her eyes in the glass. But she had to be careful. Mirrors were liminal objects, thresholds between worlds. If she looked too long, if she called on the wrong powers, she might see something other than her beloved. She might see death. She might see something worse. Mirror gazing was not a game. It was serious divination, and it required both courage and caution. These rituals were not foolproof. They relied on interpretation, on the willingness to see meaning in random patterns, on the power of suggestion and hope, but they were also genuine attempts to grasp at agency, at knowledge, at some small measure of control over a future that felt uncertain and frightening. Love was not always a choice in the Scotland of the past. Marriages were arranged. Economic necessity dictated partnerships. But these divination rituals gave young people, particularly young women, a way to imagine choice, to feel that they had some say in their romantic futures. And perhaps that was enough. Perhaps just the act of asking the question, of scattering hemp seed or gazing into a mirror, was itself empowering. It said, I matter, my future matters. I am not just passive. I am seeking, I am asking, I am looking for love, and I will find it. The candles have burned low. The fire is nothing but embers now, a soft glow in the darkness. Outside, the February night is deep and still, and we come at last to the end of our journey, to the quiet closing of this night of Scottish love and tradition. We have travelled far tonight, from the first tentative walks of courtship, chaperoned and careful, to the reading of omens on wedding mornings, from the chaos of blackenings and the weight of creeling to the solemn beauty of handfasting. Hands bound together, facing an uncertain future. We have learned the meanings woven into symbols. White heather blessed by tears, Luckenbooth brooches with locked hearts, Celtic knots that have no end, thistles that defend as fiercely as they love. And we have sat in candlelight with young women who scattered hemp seed in graveyards and gazed into mirrors, hoping for glimpses of love yet to come. All of these are Scottish love, not one thing, but many. Courtship and community, omens and customs, protection and partnership, magic and practicality, the grand gestures and the small, quiet rituals, the symbols we carry and the futures we seek. What do these stories and traditions tell us? Perhaps that love has always required courage, the courage to walk out with a chaperone watching, the courage to read the signs and proceed despite bad omens, the courage to be blackened by your friends and still show up at the altar, the courage to carry stones until your beloved releases you, the courage to bind your hands to another person's and face the world together. Love is also community, the ceilidhs where young people met, the families who approved or disapproved courtships, the friends who ambushed you with treacle, the guests who broke bannocks and scrambled for pieces, the witnesses at handfastings, the neighbours who watched for omens and offered protection. And love is hope, the hope woven into white heather carried in bouquets, the hope locked into silver brooches, the hope knotted into endless Celtic patterns, the hope that made young women scatter seeds in graveyards and peer into mirrors, seeking reassurance that love would find them. These traditions endure because they speak to something timeless, the desire to connect, the need to belong, the hope that we will not face life alone, the belief that there are right ways and wrong ways to begin a partnership, that symbols matter, that omens speak, that the future can be glimpsed if we look carefully enough. On this Valentine's night, as you drift towards sleep, remember that you are part of this long tradition. Every person who has hoped for love, who has prepared for partnership, who has watched for signs and carried symbols. The young women walking out with chaperones, the brides checking the weather on their wedding mornings, the grooms carrying creels through villages, the couples binding their hands together, the seekers gazing into mirrors. All of them, in their different ways, were reaching for the same thing you reach for: connection, commitment, the hope that love, however tested, might survive and grow. May your own heart be blessed. May your loves be deep and true. May you find your white heather in the purple hills. May you carry whatever you need to carry with grace and courage. And may you always have someone willing to kiss you so you can set down the weight. thank you for joining me by the fire tonight. If these old Scottish traditions have moved you, if they have brought you comfort or wonder, or simply helped you drift towards sleep, I hope you will share them, like this video, subscribe to Caledonia Sleeps, and let these tales of Scottish love and custom accompany you through your own February nights. The fire is out, the night is deep, and it is time to rest. Good night from the fireside. Good night from Scotland. Good night.